Blavatsky on the Jesuits. Now, if you don't know who H.P. Blavatsky was, Helena Petrovna Blavatsky, she's the founder of Theosophy. And if you go study that, you can see that she thought Lucifer was a good guy and that the God of the Bible was bad. Basically, if you could sum it all up, I have plenty of quotes to prove that. She said it in her own writings. Lucifer is good and God bad. Blavatsky's view of Satan, okay? This is the theosophical view of the devil. All right, so let's take a look at that. These are direct quotes from Blavatsky. She said this: Lucifer represents life, thought, progress, civilization, liberty, independence. Lucifer is the Logos, the serpent, the Savior. And then you get the pages, Sacred Doctrine, Volume 2. You can go look those quotes up yourself, that he's a Savior. In Volume 2, Anthropogenesis, Blavatsky continued to exalt the devil. She said, quote, Satan will now be shown in the teaching of the Sacred Doctrine, allegorized as good and sacrifice a God of wisdom under different names. Blavatsky added, in this case, it is but natural, even from the dead letter standpoint, to view Satan, the serpent of Genesis, as the real creator and benefactor. You hear what she said? It is natural to view Satan as the real creator, benefactor, the father of spiritual mankind. For it is he who was the harbinger of light, bright radiant Lucifer, who opened the eyes of the automaton created by Jehovah, as alleged, and he who was the first to whisper, in the day you eat thereof you shall be as Elohim, knowing good and evil. Can only be regarded in the light of a Savior. Again, calls the devil a Savior. An adversary to Jehovah, the personating spirit, he still remains in esoteric truth, the ever-loving messenger, the angel, the seraphim, the cherubim, who both knew well and loved still more, saying the devil loved, and who conferred on us spiritual instead of physical immortality, the latter a kind of static immortality that would have transformed man into an undying wandering Jew. Okay, so she's saying Satan loved us, and since he loved us, he gave us knowledge, saved us from death, freed us. Okay? Now, she did not like the Jesuits. Now, again, if you need to get caught up on the Jesuits, I suggest you go back. I've been doing a series on the Jesuits. I have 4 messages up on the Jesuits. Okay? So go back and watch that. I started off with the founder, Ignatius Loyola, and then I talked about their exercises, their moral code. I talked about the Black Pope and their structure and all these other types of things. Go get caught up on that if you need to understand how they really operate. But we're going to see here that she really didn't like them. But she says some very interesting things about them, because in Satan's kingdom, when people are into the occult and witchcraft and these types of things, they're not exactly all in harmony. Okay? They're not all in complete unity because they get jealous of each other. Especially if they think someone has more power. Boy, there's a lot of ego battles with people into the occult. So let's look at what she wrote. And I'll give you the source here. I'll give you the link. I have the web address there. Blavatsky, Collected Writings, Volume 9. She wrote this article called Theosophy or Jesuitism. And she had a publication actually called Lucifer. But we have here Lucifer, Volume 2, Number 10, June 1888. And the page numbers, right? Okay, so all the way back in 1888, Blavatsky wrote about the Jesuits. Now, let's see what she said specifically in this article about the Jesuits and the occult. She said this: it is curious to observe how persistently the order has assailed everything like occultism from the earliest times, and theosophy since the foundation of its last society, which is ours. The Moors and the Jews of Spain felt the weight of the oppressive hand of obscurantism no less than the Kabbalists and the alchemists of the Middle Ages. One would think esoteric philosophy, and especially the occult arts or magic, were an abomination to these good holy fathers. And so indeed they would have the world believe. But when one studies history and the works of their own authors, published with the imprimatur of the order, what does one find? That the Jesuits have practiced not only occultism, but black magic in its worst form, more than any other body of men, and that to it they owe in large measure their power and influence. Wow. So before I continue, because she has more to say, if you've never heard this before, I want you to let this sink in a little bit. Blavatsky is saying the Jesuits have practiced more black magic more than anyone else, and that they owe their power and influence to the black magic, their knowledge and their acquisition of power through black magic. That's what she's saying. Now, where would they get this power? Where would they learn all this stuff? Well, they went all around the world. See? Jesuit missionaries. And they would travel to remote places. In Tibet, in jungles in South America, in Africa, Haiti. And they would go among the tribes there. And the occult practices and the folklore and all those other types of things that they were into in there, in those regions, they would absorb it. Bring it back home, put it all together, and look what you got. Now let's continue. To refresh the memory of our readers, and all those whom it may concern, a short summary of the doings and actings of our good friends may be once more attempted. For those who are inclined to laugh and deny the subterranean and truly infernal means used by Ignatius's black militia, we may state facts. In Isis Unveiled, it was said of the Holy Fraternity that, quote, though established only in 1535 to 1540, in 1555 there was already general outcry raised against them. And now once more, quote, that crafty, learned, conscienceless, terrible soul of Jesuitism within the body of Romanism is slowly but surely possessing itself of the whole prestige and spiritual power that clings to it. Throughout the whole of antiquity, where, in what land can we find anything like this order or anything even approaching it? The cry of an outraged public morality was raised against this order from its very birth. Barely 15 years had elapsed after the bull approving its constitution was promulgated, when its members began to be driven away from one place to the other. Portugal and the Low Countries got rid of them in 1578, France in 1594, Venice in 1606, Naples in 1622. From St. Petersburg they were expelled in 1815, and from all Russia in 1820. And she quoted from Isis Unveiled, Volume 2, page 352. And they were expelled from many different countries, over 80 countries. They kicked them out. You wonder why. Weren't up to anything good. Now, she's just kind of giving some background there. And a side note that Blavatsky gives herself, this is her note in her article. She says this, quote, mesmerism or hypnotism is a prominent factor in occultism. It is magic. The Jesuits were acquainted with and practiced it ages before Mesmer and Charcot. H.P. Blavatsky. Okay? So she says they practiced hypnotism and that is magic and that they were doing it before Mesmer. Because, a lot of times they trace hypnotism back to Mesmer. They name mesmerism after him, right? And that's a whole nother rabbit trail to go down. But that's very interesting for a number of different reasons. We don't too many rabbit holes to go down. But anyway, she offers that. Let's continue. Then she says this. Let us then examine the ideas on magic of the Jesuits, that magic which they are pleased to call devilish and satanic when studied by theosophists. See how mad she is about this? It's jealousy. Let us then examine the ideas on magic of the Jesuits. Writing on this subject in in his secret instructions, Anthony Escobar says, this is a Jesuit, by the way, it is lawful to make use of the science acquired through the assistance of the devil. Okay, let that sink in for a second. He says it's lawful to make use of the science acquired through the assistance of the devil, provided the preservation and use of that knowledge do not depend upon the devil. For the knowledge is good in itself, and the sin by which it was acquired is gone by. See, this is the way that they use the casuistry. I did a teaching about that, the Jesuits' use of casuistry, to explain away and justify any sin possible. They try to find a way of justifying it. And that's what he was doing right there, making an excuse to use the assistance of devils through magic, saying that it's okay. And she was quoting, she said, Anthony Escobar. So I'm just showing you who that is. She's quoting Jesuit Antonio Escobar y Mendoza. He was alive from 1589 to 1669. And the quote is taken from the book Moral Theology, also known as Theologia Moralis, by Alphonsus Liguori, who was later made a saint by the Church, the Catholic Church. Okay, so that's where that quote comes from. The Jesuits saying it's okay to make use of the science acquired through the assistance of the devil. All right, let's continue. Hence, why should not a Jesuit cheat the devil as well as he cheats every layman? That's what she says. Here's another quote that she quotes from the Jesuits. Astrologers and soothsayers are either bound or not bound to restore the reward of their divination if the event does not come to pass. They got to give their money back. I own, remarks the good Father Escobar, that the former opinion does not at all please me, because when the astrologer or diviner has exerted all the diligence in the diabolic art which is essential to his purpose, he has fulfilled his duty, whatever may be the result. As the physician, when he has made use of medicines according to the principles of his professional knowledge, is not bound to restore the fee which he has received if his patient should die, so neither is the astrologer bound to restore his charge and cost to the person who has consulted him, except when he has used no effort or was ignorant of his diabolic art, because when he has used his endeavors, he has not deceived. Now, this is so insane. It just blows me away. So this is Antonio Escobar again. But listen, what he is saying here is he's not arguing against, being involved with practicing the occult, using astrology, divination. He's saying that he doesn't like the remark that when someone says that, if they pay someone to tell them the future, right, like a psychic, and then the event doesn't come to pass, that the psychic should give them their money back. And the Jesuit says, no, I don't think they should have to give the money back. Because, they did their best. It's not their fault. It's like a doctor who tries to heal you, and if he doesn't, he's not successful, at least he tried. He shouldn't have to give money back. So he's justifying a witch for not giving their money back for someone who paid them to tell them the future. Unreal. But anyways, Blavatsky quotes that. Here's another one. Busenbaum and Lacroix in Theologia Moralis say, quote, palmistry, another occult practice, may be considered lawful if from the lines and divisions of the hands it can ascertain the disposition of the body and conjecture with probability the propensities and affections of the soul. Again, they're saying it's okay to do palmistry, various occult practices, it's okay. Now, who were these people? Busenbaum and Lacroix. Busenbaum was a Jesuit theologian, Herman Busenbaum, and Lacroix is Jesuit Claude Lacroix. Lacroix made a commentary on Busenbaum's work, Medulla Theologiae Moralis, called Theologia Moralis. Okay? So that's the source. I added that to there just so you had a little bit more from what she quoted. Okay? So she's quoting multiple Jesuits that are in their own writings justifying occult practices. Let's see what else she said. Students of occultism should know that while the Jesuits have, by their devices, contrived to make the world in general, and Englishmen in particular, think there is no such thing as magic, these astute and wily schemers themselves hold magnetic circles and form magnetic chains by the concentration of their collective will when they have any special object to affect or any particular and important person to influence. Now, she had a lot of knowledge about this stuff, and I'm sure she rubbed shoulders with some of these Jesuits. And I know that I believe she knew Rudolf Steiner, and I knew that he had studied the Jesuits. I think he might have known some of them too. So they could have had a little bit more knowledge, even than they're letting on in these writings, but they definitely knew a lot of stuff that they were into. But, so that's the end of the section with Blavatsky. But just to say one more thing before we move on. So she quotes some of the writings that they justify occult practices, but her claim, though, her big claim here is that they have knowledge and power of black magic more than anyone else in the world. That's where they get all their power and influence from. Obviously acknowledging how much power and influence they have. Very, very interesting.